Hey everybody, Michael Snyder here, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. We have a fun episode coming up today. Interesting weather will be ongoing this weekend into early next week with a frontal system potentially coming across the area as well, and then a potential heat wave after that. So lots to talk about. Monsoon moisture flowing up over the region here on the visible satellite imageries. You can see low clouds across some of the Strait of Juan de Fuca towards Whidbey Island and the San Juans down the Washington, Oregon coast. Hit and miss. You can see the forest fires going. Bedrock fire, flat fire, sourdough, Eagle Bluff. Check out some of the valleys in BC really suffering up there with some dense smoke across the region. Not good. Idaho, Montana, pretty nice coating of smoke there as well. And with that looming heat wave off through the extended, hopefully we don't continue to kick up forest fire smoke here. If we get some offshore winds, that could quickly come into the Seattle and the Portland metros here as well. But yeah, it's not pleasant for people downstream of this fire activity. And we have thunderstorm activity possible this weekend as well that could even move out over the lowlands of western Washington also. And it's really targeting eastern Washington, some of the higher terrain of eastern Oregon, the Blue Mountains there, northeast Washington, BC here. Interesting stuff coming up here in the forecast, folks. This is the Western Pacific. So this is a big player in our weather. You can see the typhoon out here, all this tropical moisture, and we're going to get an injection of that into the westerly flow. It's going to dig a big trough here over the Pacific Ocean and potentially ridging downstream in the extended forecast for the Pacific Northwest. This is looking at Spokane. You can see they're picking up on that thunderstorm activity Saturday, Sunday, Monday here, region-wide 10 to 30% here. It's going to be hit and miss, but some areas could get some pretty heavy rainfall amounts from that. More on that here in a moment. If you guys want a nice, affordable home weather station, click on the link down below. All solar-powered, all wireless, nice smartphone app with this station. I highly recommend it. It's extremely accurate, and you can scroll around the rest of the world. Check out their map. You can see even some places across South America, Central America have this weather station, or you can keep all your data private if you want as well. Looking at SeaTac yesterday, 84 degrees again, another quite warm day here, 5 degrees above average. Nice start to the month here for August, and I don't know how much we're going to cool down here, maybe a little bit here as we go through the weekend here with some clouds trying to spread over the region and even a thunderstorm potential, but then that heat kind of looming in our extended forecast here. You can see back in 2010 on the 14th, 15th, we hit 95 and 96. This is prime heat wave territory for the Pacific Northwest. We are still quite warm this time of year. You know, the waters off the Pacific Ocean are warming up, so it's tough to cool down overnight, for example. And we're just not that wet this time of year either. Look at this average, just about an inch of rain for the month. Do we have a couple precipitation chances coming up, mainly as we go through this weekend and on in through the 9th and 10th time frame before we really dry out as we get towards mid-month here. So we'll take a look at those details here in a moment. This is the European 500 millibars. This is 18,000 feet approximately. There's Alaska, BC, Washington, Oregon there. Here goes our troughing off the coastline. You can see the ridge build up towards Alaska, but at the same time, we're left with some troughing across the Washington state. So check it out as we go through Sunday morning here. You can kind of see that right there, and I'll show you more detail here on that in a moment. But that's going to keep that thunderstorm threat going, possibly even into western Washington as we go through this weekend. And then you can see a weak system kind of slide down, swing through here as we go on in through the mid portion of next week. But then check out that trough that I talked about. Going to get the injection of some of the energy into the jet stream here and really dig that trough. And downstream, we get the big ridging potential here across Pacific Northwest here. So this is up towards record heights at 18,000 feet here. So big, thick portion of the atmosphere here. Lots of sinking air, offshore flow, potential for thermal trough coming up the coastline here. Interesting stuff in the extended forecast. And here's looking at Quileute Airport. This is 500 millibars, and this is just kind of giving you a look at the upper level pattern here. You can see we drop down in that troughing here for a bit in the 8th, 9th, 10th day time frame here, and then we really build that ridging here. They control a little bit higher than some of the ensemble members there, but still a strong ridge potentially coming for the Pacific Northwest. This is looking at precipitable water. Let's back this all the way up, and you can see this deep, rich moisture across the western Pacific here. There's BC, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, and Alaska there. Put it into motion, and you'll see this weak system kind of slide through right there. See it kind of moving through BC there. But then you see all this tropical moisture kind of move up and into some of the remnants of some typhoon activity, really helping to dig this trough. We formed this strong gradient here And the Earth wants to get all this energy from the equator to the poles, natural heat transfer there. And you can see the big trough with the big ridging that would build downstream here with the potential warm up here for much of the region. We'll be watching that closely over the next few days. This is looking at sea level pressure, and I wanted to show you this just really quick, the classic signature for all our heat waves. I'll show you that. If we scroll ahead here, you can see that system kind of moving towards South Alaska through BC here. It just kind of clips us in the Pacific Northwest here, bringing us a cool down. But then you'll see the stronger storms develop out across the Aleutians over the Pacific Ocean. We really build this ridge all the way up into British Columbia. And then there's a classic thermal trough signature here for all Pacific Northwest heat waves that does exist out towards August 13th. So we're going to be watching that one closely. Exciting times coming up here. Here we go with 6-hour precipitation type here on the European. Check out some of that activity across eastern Oregon as we go through this afternoon and evening today. And then overnight here, even across some of the Cascades, it's trying to reach out. And look, by Saturday, some of this activity trying to move into western Washington as well, at least on the European. This low pressure system is going to be spinning here. Some favorable wind flow for some of this precip to get out over Seattle here. So this could be interesting here for the Blue Angels flying out here. You know, you start to bring the clouds and you start lowering some of those ceilings out there, and you might make it difficult for them to get a show in on Saturday or Sunday. So that could be interesting. And check out eastern Washington. I mean, you're getting rainfall here in some normally extremely dry places here, especially during the summertime coming up. And you can see that activity all the way in through Tuesday across Idaho, Montana as well, British Columbia. And then as we go scroll a little further out, you can see actually we passed up that system. That system's not trending that strong here. You can kind of see it fly through here. Not a lot of precip associated with that, but there would be onshore flow with it. And then we really start to dry out here as we go through the extended forecast as the ridge would build. Now looking at the NAM3 cam, this goes out 60 hours. And in fact, let's do this. Let's go ahead and grab the 12Z run because it's probably done running here. Let's bounce out. Yep, it is. It's at hour 60. So put this into motion. You can see the activity across Oregon today, and there's a possibility for some lightning strikes starting some fires here. You can see some of that try to move out towards the Cascades here. You can see the from east to west movement here up against the Cascades here. Not showing too much getting out over Seattle. But you can see as we go through Sunday, look at some of this activity across eastern Washington, and we can see the spin in the atmosphere here on the NAM3KM, bringing some widespread thunderstorm activity for eastern Washington across the Blue Mountains, northeast Washington as well. Will this get out over the Cascades into western Washington? Doesn't look like it here on the high resolution model. The European model disagrees with that. So we'll watch that a little bit closer tomorrow as well. And I'll try to get my forecast out nice and early so everybody can have a plan here if you're going out to try to see the Blue Angels or something in Seattle. Look at Moses Lake. Check out the control run. Actually shows measurable precipitation. Extremely dry area out there, Moses Lake. This would be quite a treat. As you can see, some of these ensemble runs showing some pretty good amounts of that thunderstorm activity here as we go on in through this weekend. Spokane, look at this. Virtually all the ensembles have some kind of measurable precipitation, including the control run with a 1/2 inch. So you could be looking at some flooding potential too, because some of this is bound to fall in a short time frame here, associated again with thunderstorm activity. Now this is looking at the UW model here. This is 1.33 kilometer. We're looking at composite reflectivity. As we scroll through, let's go ahead and push ahead here a little bit more. Now we're scrolling through the day today. Look at this activity across Oregon here. And then it tries to push up towards the southern Washington Cascades as we go through Saturday morning here, trying to creep out across the lower western Washington locations here. Will it make it? Not sure, but you can kind of see that spin in the atmosphere there over eastern Washington. Look at this, just bringing a couple rounds here of thunderstorm activity to a very normally dry area during the summertime especially. And you can see the spin continue all the way in through Sunday afternoon across the area. Might get a nice lightning show across some portions of eastern Washington, Blue Mountains, northeast Washington as well, with the slight potential of some of that coming out into western Washington. Now looking at 850 millibars, 5,000 feet. So what's going on? You can kind of see the spin in the atmosphere here and that cooler than normal air associated with the trough. And you can kind of see it just kind of bubbling around the region here, and then finally starts to kick off as we go through Monday on and through Tuesday. It'll eventually start to move out of the area before that next frontal system tries to swing by here. This is 700 millibars, 10,000 feet, and you'll see the spin in the atmosphere here too as well. I just thought I'd show this. You can see that low pressure system kind of sitting here. This would be Sunday morning here. Kind of spinning around here, giving us our activity, and then you can see it start to kick off to the northeast. Now, looking at thunderstorm potential, this is day one. Can't rule out one getting up into the Cascades today, probably later in the period tonight. Oregon, and it even actually includes some of Portland and Eugene. I'm not sure if we'll get a thunderstorm out there today, but you can't rule it out. According to the SPC here, this would be for tomorrow and for Sunday as well. Cascades of Washington, Oregon, and especially eastern Washington, Oregon as well. Now, looking at the heat potential coming up, you can see that trough kind of moving through here for Portland, slightly below average even through the 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then look at this warm up and look at some of the ensemble runs here. Big disagreement on just how warm we're going to get. This box here is the 25 and the 75 percentile here for those European ensemble runs. And look at some of these have the temperature up over 105. Even the 5 to 95 percentile has it over 110 for a couple days for Portland here. But you can see on the flip side of that as well, some of these are much lower towards just the mid 80s here. And some of the extreme outliers keep things much cooler across the area. But you can see pretty good agreement in this heat coming up here as we go through the following weekend. What about the August 12, 13, 14, 15 timeframe would be when that warm-up is occurring. This is Tillamook, even out to the Oregon coast. Potential with that thermal trough could get quite warm. Look at some of the ensembles have it up into the 90s here for the 13th and 14th. Interesting stuff coming up. Look at Hoquiam, Washington as well. Some of the ensembles have it up into the 90s also, with some extreme outliers there as well. But on the flip side, you can see the big model disagreement here. Between the ensembles, I should say. So, you don't want to get too caught up in it just yet and say, hey, the heat wave is coming for sure, because you can see the big differences in some of these ensemble runs and the temperature coming up. Right now, it's just kind of looking like this is a potential to happen with increasing confidence. Let's put it that way. And here we go, Bend, Oregon here as well. You can see the warm up again, Seattle Metro. And again, this red line when I'm showing these graphs is the average temperature this time of year. Look at this. 1, 2, 3 days in the 90s here as we go on in through August 13, 14, 15, 16th area. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Look at some of these ensembles just with some crazy wild temperatures. It's going to be fun to watch this ridge develop. Spokane, this time of year, there's the red line, potential warm up with that ridge afterwards. But look at the trough in the meantime, keeping things suppressed as we deal with the thunderstorm activity through this weekend. And then that troughing continues on in through mid portions of the week before the potential warm up would come. Brookings, Oregon, look at these ensembles just kind of all over the place here as well. How much offshore flow is going to reach some of that southern Oregon coastline? We are just not quite sure at this moment. So big model disagreement coming up. Seattle Metro, look at this. Actually shows the control run with over a half an inch, 0.6 of an inch of rain here as we go through this Seafair weekend coming up. And you can kind of see the hit and miss nature of what the ensembles are showing here. And this would be that next frontal system kind of trending downwards in some of its precipitation amounts. But then you can see the trend towards drier weather here as we move out towards the 13th period and later. Just a few ensembles picking up on something there. We'll worry about that as we get closer. Hoquiam, here's that frontal system here. A little bit more agreement here in the ensembles, but not showing much for the control run. And this would be a little bit of thunderstorm activity, maybe even making it all the way up to the Washington coastline there. No promises with that. Bellingham, something similar here. You can see the frontal system there with some of that potential thunderstorm activity trying to get out over some of the lowlands of western Washington. Here we go, 6 to 10 day here, and you can see as we go through August 13th, we're starting to trend upward here for above average potential. And look at the 8 to 14 day, man. August 11th through August 17th, they're really cranking up the probabilities as this ridge starts to increase our confidence in above average temperatures here. 6 to 10 day here, better chances the further you go east with that thunderstorm activity as well. And we talked about this the last couple days as well. We are now into technically moderate El Nino territory. Although, we'll see how this trends. We could be headed towards a strong El Nino here as we eventually go through the fall and winter months here. We'll see how that goes. But this is where we measure those ENSO temperatures. El Nino Southern Oscillation right across the equatorial Pacific, south of the Hawaiian Islands. South America's there. There's Mexico and Australia here. And you can see our climb out of La Nina last fall into the El Nino conditions coming up. So we're going to have some interesting weather here probably coming fall and winter months here because there's some unusual properties with this El Nino. A lot of the oceans across the world are warm, and El Nino can be defined as the difference in temperatures between the equatorial Pacific and some of the rest of the ocean here. So if you got warmer than normal temperatures, maybe it could act more like a neutral year. We'll see. I mean, we'll just kind of see how that plays out and see what the temperatures across the rest of the world do as we go on into fall and winter as well. This is looking at the drought monitor. This was released August 3rd. The data was valid August 1st there. But you can see we're getting some of the severe drought creeping into portions of eastern Washington as well. So hopefully maybe that thunderstorm activity can get down towards the Palouse out there and down towards some of the farmland out there in southeast Washington. Grow a lot of wheat out there, and you can see some severe and moderate drought across western Oregon, the Cascades as well. So we'll take anything we can get here, especially with that big ridge looming through our extended forecast here, which just would exacerbate some of these drought conditions potentially. And this was issued yesterday here, and really it's just a good thing to just kind of consider everything high risk at this time of year. I mean, you know, don't let your guard down is what I'm saying here. Just because you don't see high risk on some of these areas here, you know, it doesn't mean you should be careless with fire starts out there. You know, there's going to be some lightning strikes here going on across Pacific Northwest. They're going to kick up enough fires on their own. We don't need humans adding to that. And here's looking at that day one fire risk here. You can see it is elevated here across eastern Washington, and check it out. Isolated dry thunderstorm potential across eastern Oregon there. So these thunderstorms might not be producing enough precip to extinguish any fires they create. And it's going to go on again through tomorrow there as well. Yeah, interesting stuff coming up here, folks. This thunderstorm activity, we're going to go over this in some detail with the high-resolution models tomorrow and try to pinpoint, is this going to creep out west of the Cascades or not? But eastern Washington, portions of the eastern Oregon look like you're going to be under the gun here. Some unusual precipitation amounts for some normally very dry areas out there as well. And this lightning is going to start some forest fires across the Cascades. You can see, you know, Canada so far this year has set records for just how much acreage they've burned. A lot of smoke still going on up there. We haven't been doing too bad across a lot of Washington and Oregon unless you're pretty close to the Bedrock, the Flat Fire, or the Sourdough, or the Eagle Bluff Fire here. But that can change rapidly. As you guys know, it doesn't take much for these forest fires to get going this time of year. But anyway, hope you guys are liking these videos. Click like, subscribe. We'll do this again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.